Okay. Okay, so welcome all to this session. I think many of you already knowing that I'm Satej Kumar. Okay. So today we'll be discussing about like how to test models. Okay, using PHPUnit testing framework. Okay. So this is the contents we will be discussing. First we will start like a very short intro to PHPUnit, okay, and some concepts. It's visible, right? It's visible to all, right? Okay. Then some unit test concepts. How to go about thinking about test cases, okay. Intro to MVC structure. Role of the model layer in MVC and testing models, how to test PHPUnit, like models using PHPUnit, and what are the ways of testing models, okay, and then conclude. So, so like when you went, I think many of you would have gone through the contents, right? So, what are your expectations from this? From this session, what would you be gaining? Any short, anything. You'll be like first thing you'll be learning a little about PHPUnit. Anything else? You'll be learning how to what is models, okay, in an MVC layer. Sorry. And how to test models. Anything else? Any other expectations from this session?
Evaluating output and input, like with insertion, notation.
Yeah. Okay, that comes with model testing. Okay. Yeah, Nancy, you see.
Code coverage, how much, whatever the test cases, how much code is
That I won't be discussing in this. Maybe in some other session. Okay, code coverage.
So it's not only about model. When you use code data, get data. It's about our output classes and controller also. When you write our business logic. So basically that's the thing we need to test more because that is the kind of thing which can change based on the requirements in this going forward. So and we need to make sure that any changes that is happening in future, moving forward, should not affect the existing functionality that's implemented by me or somebody else before.
Yeah, so that is what PHPUnit testing in general helps. So basically what Tapasri you said was like controllers, right? Like for controllers there are okay, I'll be discussing about MVC there, like okay. But to test the controller you have a different way, okay? So basically today we'll just be going through how to test models, okay? So like because models are your core thing, they contain your business logic and they're very central to your application. Okay, if they go away, like even if a request comes, you won't be able to respond, right? Any other?
Testing for exception.
Uh, Maybe I won't be able to cover it in here. Okay, maybe in another session, maybe I'll take a note of it. Okay, any other? So, okay, I'll tell like what are the general things we'll be checking today. Basically, we'll know about like how to go about unit testing, okay, and what is the role of model layer in MVC architecture. I won't be showing you like a complete like model is here, view is here, controller is here. I'll just be showing like this is a model file and how you are going to test it. Okay, not a complete working application. Okay. and I'll be showing like how to test your model files. There are two ways. We'll be discussing that. Okay. Okay. So, has anybody previously used PHPUnit? Okay. Everything is visible, right? Otherwise, we can change position. Yes. Okay. 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 So basically an intro to PHPUnit. So PHPUnit is a programmer-oriented testing framework which is used for PHP. You can find the documentation at this link. So basically, how do you install PHPUnit? So you have a basic requirement with PHPUnit is you should have PHP 5.6 version. Okay, lower than that it doesn't execute. So basically you have a FAR file, PHAR file, you just download it, okay, and you just give a permission to it like execute permission using this command in your command line, that is chmod plus x then phpunit.far, the file which you downloaded.
Better if you would be, because it's some kind of this section it is hiding.
It's not visible from that side? Okay, okay, okay. Now it's visible to us, right? Okay. So you downloaded the FAR file and then you just give it a permission of execute, okay, using this command chmod plus x phpunit.far, and then you move it into your user local bin, okay. You just make it, rename it to this PHPUnit so that it is available to your command line from anywhere, okay. So here we will be going through like some unit test concepts. So when you are trying to unit test something, like any function you say, okay. So there are just three things. I think people already know if they attended my previous session. I just repeat it. You have to assemble. Like let's say you're testing a class name. Let's say student. Okay. So you may have some functions under it, right? Like let's say you want to test like student some enrolling function, okay, like register. Let's say a login function, okay. So you have student then login, okay. So since you want to test this login, right? So is this visible? Okay. So the first part is you assemble it, okay. So what assembling means is you make the whatever you want to test, you initialize it, okay. But because then only you are going to test it, okay. So let's say I want to initialize this class student, okay. So what I'll do, okay. So I initialize the class, okay. So this is like I assembled the function which I want to test. Then you take the action which you want to test, okay. Let's say I want to test so this is the result I want to test, okay. Okay, so I just want to know how many students are there in the school or something, okay. So this will give me the result. now is you need to assert it. Okay, so this is what a basic unit test structure is. Okay, you assembled what you want to test, then you do the action whichever you want to test, so you got the result, and you know that when you do this action you have an expected result. Let's say I know that there are no students in this class, so when I run this it will give me 0, right? So what I'll do, I'll just put a value 0 here. So when I run this test case, it will just say that okay, your test case passes. So this is a basic unit test case. Okay.
How do we know if it passed or failed
Uh,
in your unit test case?
Basically, these
That return a true or
the
false?
assert functions, they are the main basic like units of unit testing. Okay. So basically you assert the values. That is what unit testing is about. You get a value and you assert it against an expected value. Okay. So let's say I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a logic. Okay. You have purchased an item. Let's say your initial. Okay. A very simple example. Let's say we'll do. So I have an empty array here. Okay. Let's say I have a class which increases the count. Okay. Let's say iterator something. So what it should do is, let's say whenever I pass like add element, okay, it should give me that it should increase the count of $a by 1. Okay, it should have an element. So let's say I'll do okay. So this I have assembled, this I have taken the action. So what I know that this function, when you call it on iterator, it takes this element and it inserts this, it pushes this value into this array. Okay. So what is the result I'm expecting? Sorry, its result. Okay, can anyone say what is the expected value can be? Hmm? No. This will add this element to this array. So it will give me an array which will contain this value. So previously it was empty. Now it will contain this value. So what I should write for this $expected value? Yeah. So I know this $expected is okay. So when I run this, it should work. So that is the logic which I think it should do. Okay.
But it's new. You added the value as new.
You added new.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. So this is the expected value. Okay. So this is just one part you asserted. What else can you assert here?
Like blank array or zero, anything.
Yeah, that you can check.
Integer.
Another thing you can check is the count. Previously the count was 0, now it should be 1. Okay. but it doesn't make sense. Like it actually the second case it tests everything. It tests like the count also and the value also. Okay. So this was just a very simple example to say how you go about unit testing. Okay. What is a basic unit test structure like? Okay. So that was the assemble action and assert thing. Okay. And there is a thing called single responsibility principle. Okay. So it says that whenever you go about developing anything, if you want it to be unit tested, you should have like, let's say you're developing a class. Let's say class authentication. Okay. So it should only deal with authentication. It should not have like send an email functionality along with. You should have an email functionality in a separate thing. So that is what you are giving it a single responsibility. That is, that class should have a related set of functionalities, okay, and each method inside it should do only one thing, okay. It should not be like it should authenticate, validate. It should also do a regex check. So every like independent functionality should be in its own method, okay. So that is what single responsibility is. Okay. In that way, your code remains modular and it doesn't get repeated. Okay. Because you already have the units. You just need to use it in other places. Okay. There is another principle called dependency injection. Okay. Anyone knows what is dependency injection?
If you need to suppose there are function inside the class,
Yeah.
that function depends upon some objects from outside of that class. Suppose
Yeah.
one function inside one class depends upon another function of another class,
Yes.
or another member from another class.
Yes.
So at that time, instead of writing class, this class equal to new class inside that function, you can write it inside an argument. This is a class, and this argument name as an object. So that while unit testing, you can get that object, like you can pass that mock object and get the program.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Lekin said it correct. So I just go about like how what is. Okay, so here is an example of dependency. Okay, so you can see that I have a class student. I know that it will do some database connection. So I could do two things. Okay, first is like I could initialize the database connection inside the class. Okay, like you could write like localhost and all this connection parameter inside it. Or what you could do is you are passing something when you're initializing the class. Okay, so that way what happens is you are separating the database layer into a different thing. Okay, so let's say instead of this, what I do, if I do a database connection here, okay, like connect, I pass the local host and everything here. Okay, so I get the database connection inside it. Okay, so let's say when you want to test it, so it has an inner dependency, okay, which you cannot test, right? Because let's say your connection is to the live database, but you want to test with the local database, right? So again, When I'm going to test, I'm going to do what? New student. Okay, I'm going to initialize it. So when I initialize it, it will give me a connection to the live database, right? So it has a dependency, right? So when you do unit test, it should not have a dependency. It should be a very modular code. It should not have any external dependency. Okay? So what I'll do while testing is I'll create a database connection in my unit test, okay, and I'll just pass it into this constructor while initializing new student. Then I'll pass my own connection, okay. That makes sense, okay. So overall, the single responsibility principle and unit testable code and dependency injection, they lead you to like independent decoupled code, okay, where you can reuse everything. So how to think about test cases, okay? So, okay, it's a very general question, like how do you go about testing? Like how do you think like, okay, this is the function I want to test? How do you, because it's like you do test driven development. You first think like how I'm going to test it, then you write the code for it, okay? So anyone can tell like how to go about think about a test case.
What is the input and output?
Okay, I'll just give an example. You just need to say like how do you think about testing? Okay, let's say this is the function. Okay, I haven't written anything inside. Okay. So if I want to test this authenticate function, like how do I go about testing it? What do you think should be inside it?
Using password, DB object,
Arguments, what are the arguments?
Okay, what could be the arguments? Let's say I'm writing a test case. It should not be in this file. I'm just writing it here. Okay. Let's say login, new login. Okay. Then login. Okay, what should I pass? Like what your argument should be? Okay, let's say username, password. Okay. Okay, anything else?
database object.
database object, if we are assuming that constructor injection, dependency injection.
Okay, let's say there is a dependency. I have added it here. Okay.
Controllable injection will be there in the
Okay, I have added it here. Okay. Okay, so username, password. Then
Statement also return type.
okay, that we'll assume that it is there inside it. It uses the user table. Okay. We'll assume that something is inside it. So here is
true or false.
it should return true or false. Okay. Okay. And what do you intend to do inside authenticate? Hmm? Anything? Okay. Huh?
Just take the username and password for the correct.
So it will be doing a database connection. Okay. And what should it return to you? Just true or false, or you need some other information? Okay. Yeah. So all these things like you need to check. Okay. So let's say this is the simple authenticate we decided. Okay. So something else like let's say you have some other function. First you need to think like whether you can create a subunit out of it. Okay. Which can be used in other functions. Okay. Let's say I did something inside this function, and also I'm testing another function which uses common code. Okay, in that case that is not a unit test because your code is getting duplicated, right? So for that function you can write a unit test case. Okay, since that is being repeated, and that function you can call inside this authenticate. Okay, so in a way, let's say this authenticate function depends on some other function. Okay. So while testing, you can use something like @depends on some function. So that function will get executed first. After that passes, then this authenticate will run. Just an overall idea. You will not go into very deep. I'll say as an example. Okay. Just how to think about test cases. Okay. Your code should not be duplicated. Okay. You should be very unit module. Okay. Any question? Okay. So let's say I have a single function. How many test cases I can write for it? How many test cases should be there? It's a unit module. How many test cases I can write for it? Let's say I have just a, if it's an array, I loop through it. Else if it is a string, I just return that value. That is the function, what it is doing, okay, in a formatted, okay. It is just looping and it is just giving a data structure back, okay. So in that case, how many test cases will be there?
Depends upon the number of outcomes. Number of outcomes.
Okay. So in that case, we have two outcomes. So you need to write how many test cases? Can it be covered in one test case or two test cases? Yeah?
Depends on the data types that you are using in that function.
No, two types of data are there. You have to test two types of data. Array, string.
Test
Okay. Okay, why can't you cover it in one? In one I'll pass both.
provided.
It's because you have to it's unit test case is like you're documenting your logic. Okay, so one test case for string and another test case you have to write it for your array. Okay, so that it runs. You cannot make it one because let's say you have written a test case. Let's say it fails for the string. So you don't know like for what particular case it failed for. Okay, so it should be how many test cases are there? Every branching logic, like let's say you have a switch case. Every switch has a different logic. So you have to write three test cases for that function. Okay, makes sense too. So you can say for a single function you have to write at least one test case. It can be more than one test case for that function, but at least one. Okay. Okay. So I think most of you know like what is an MVC architecture, right? So you have a controller, view, and model level. So here you can see that the browser requests to your web server. Web server sends the request to the controller through routes. Okay. Basically, your controllers should be as thin as possible. Okay. The main role is like just to receive the request and dispatch it to the model. Okay. To execute the business logic. Okay. And it gets the output, and then it sends the output to the view so that it gets compiled with the view layer and it can send the response back to the browser. Okay. So this is what the browser sends a request. It sends a request to the model layer. Model layer can do anything. It can do a email. It's basically your business logic. Okay, you loop through all the data. You do a MySQL query. You can send an email. You process it. Okay, maybe you will do a API query. Everything will be in your model. Okay, that is what a business logic is. Then you get the requested data structure from the model. You have a view layer for that page. You send the data to the view layer. It processes it and it gets back the response. This basically sends back the response to the browser again. Okay. Any question here? So as I said here, models basically they contain the business logic of your application. So basically there are two functionalities we can group them into. One is data interaction with the database and business logic, formatting the data structure, doing API calls and email sending, all other functionalities. Okay. So it can be either singular like database connection, or it can be a combination like you do a database and then you send an email. Okay, it's a combination of. Okay. So as I said before, this is like how we go about testing models. Okay. So unit testing is basically like you want to validate whether your logic is working on. So let's say in a day-to-day life, we are creating functionalities like which do a database interaction. You need to process it, you need to update something, then you get back the data and you return back, right? But whenever you go outside the logic, like this database, it's an external system, right? Like updating to a database, that is a different thing. Your logic is what it is doing. Okay, whether it succeeded in the database or not, that is an external dependency. Okay, like you're trying to send an email inside the model. Okay, after sending an email, you want to update the database and you want to return what is the email you sent. So what is the business logic you see in that? The core, let's say I will make it a black box. What do you want to see in it? I pass it a username and email, I get back a content, right? That is the core doing, right? So if you want to unit test this, is it unit testable? Let's say I have a function. It does a database interaction, sends an email, then gives me the content of the email which was sent. So is this unit testable?
With the username, it will get the content from the database, right? So that can be done.
Okay.
You can say it's not modular. It's not modular. It contains different logic inside it.
Yeah.
Like interaction with database sending mail, it can be like in two parts.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yes. So whenever you go about, let's say, I can divide it into three parts. This formatting of this, whenever you send an email, I want the content, right? So this formatting of this content, like you have to write a sir, this name, then you have to write thanks as part of the email. So this will go into a function. Okay. This is like returning you the email content. Then another function you can have for just sending the email. Okay. And another you can have for database. Okay. So here it is saying that unit testing is solely concerned with testing your business logic and not with database testing, email sending, API testing. Okay. because unit test should be isolated from all external dependencies. Okay? Because we are not testing whether your database connection is working or not. Whether your logic is working, okay, that is the first step in unit testing. Okay, so this unit testing can be done. Okay, so shouldn't we test this database also?
Database means if connection is
Yes, this connection did or not, it updated or not. Should that be considered into your testing or not?
so if updated or not, you should check. If the
Okay.
connection existed or not.
And is that unit testing or is it integration testing? Okay, so that will go into integration testing because you're testing your unit test logic along with integration with the database, whether it is working with the database or not. Let's say you're doing an email and after that you need to do a payment also. Okay, that is a function, let's say. You're testing both the logics, that is API sending and the database. So it is like it got integrated, right? You have to test the email also and the API also. For that, it is called an integration test. You are depending on external factors. Okay? Any question?
Like if the function is there which is inserting some values in the data.
Yes.
After insertion, how can we write a test case like whether it is inserting in a database properly or not?
If you are testing the data, if you want to test like database connection, whether it updated the value, okay, then it will go into integration testing because you have an external factor called the database which comes in. But let's say you want to test that same logic, okay, but you don't want to depend on the database connection. Then it becomes unit test, okay, because you don't have a dependency. I'll show you like how to test this database related function without depending on a database connection. Okay. So there are two techniques you can use to test models. One is the DBUnit extension for database integration testing, and another is mocks to unit test models. Okay. I think many of you have been bored, right? It's lots of facts, right? But it's just, you just don't need to be serious about it. We'll just be recollecting everything in an example. Okay, it will be more clear. Okay, so this is the schema we'll be implementing. Basically, this is a blog database. Okay, we have authors. Okay, so basically in the authors table you have a name for the author. Then you have posts the author created. You have a content, the author ID who created the post, and we have a field called email sent. Let's say someone wants that post as an email sent to them. So we have a field called email sent for that post. How many times it has been sent in an email. Okay? And we have a comments table which stores like how many comments were given by a person for a particular post. So it relates this post to here and the authors here. Does design make sense? Okay, so when we go about testing this database integration, okay, PHPUnit has an extension called DBUnit, okay. So whenever you do a testing, your database should be in a very initial state, okay. So I'll show you something here. So I have this set of data, right? Okay. So it has 11 here, right? Basically it should have 10. Okay, let's say the initial state I want my database is in, it should have 10 records. Okay. till James Smith. Okay. So this is the initial state I want to do my testing against. Okay. So let's say I have 10 records here and I want to insert another. So I know that it was 10 records before and it is 11 now. Okay. So let's say I executed the insert operation. Okay. Then I want to test the update operation. If I do not reset this state to the previous 10 state, okay, then it becomes very unknown state, like you don't know what is the state, current state you are testing against. Let's say I take it back to this 10 rows, okay, then I know that if I update something, what would be the result? Final result which is there in the database. Okay, so what I'll do, this is a data fixture, means the initial data you want to test your test cases against. So let's say I have these 10 rows here. Okay, I want to test an insert operation. I'll do a select operation and you find 10 records. After I do an insert operation, if you do a select operation, how many records will you find? 11, right? Okay. So let's say insert I tested, it worked fine. Now I want to do an update. Okay. I cannot do an update for 11 record, right? Because I always want before I run the test case, I should know what data I am testing against. Okay. So what this DBUnit will do is, before you run each test case, it will truncate your data, complete database. Okay. Whatever tables you have. Okay. It will truncate everything. Whatever the test case did, it inserted, it updated, anything it did, it will truncate all of your tables so that you have defined an initial structure, okay, that I need in authors table 10 records. So you have defined the structure in somewhere. So what it will do is, it will just recreate that before you run another test case, okay, so that you know that before testing always this 10 records are there, okay. So that is what data fixture is. How do you define a data, like what is the initial state of your testing, okay. I'll tell about what are types of data fixture and what get connection and get data set is. So basically whenever you use this DBUnit to test your database integration, okay, you need to define two things, a get connection function and get data set function. What get data set will do is, it will get the initial data, okay, and it will initialize your database with that data, okay, and get connection basically gives you a database connection, okay. Okay, now we are into code. Okay, so we have this four folders here. One is the source. Let's say I want to keep all my model files inside this source, okay, and I have my tests here, okay, and this is a vendor. Basically I have uh, included the PHP mailer library to send emails, okay. So that is there in my composer.json file, which creates a vendor folder to keep the libraries for sending email, okay. So we'll enter into the test folder. Okay, so here I want to show you something. So we have here three XML files, okay, and we have a C.xml file. Let me show you the content of this c.xml file. So it's something like this. You have an XML data set here completely visible to all, right? Okay. So you have a data set. This is like an XML data fixture. Okay. You initialize it with data set. You give it a table name authors. Okay. And you define what are the columns in that using the column attribute. Then after you define this, you define what are the rows you want in the initial state. Okay. So you see here John Smith, Joe Smith, Bob Smith. So these are like in the same structure. Okay, I have not inserted any of these. When I run the test case, initially what it will do is, it will take data from here and it will truncate all the tables and insert these values. Okay. So this is the basic structure. You initialize the table, columns and values for each row. Okay. Similarly, we have the posts. After one table, you define another table and the columns and the values. And similarly, comments. Okay. Okay. So that is the seed XML. Okay. I have just named it like what is the initial structure fixture. Okay. So I've created two files. One is integration test, that is we'll be using a database connection, and another is we'll be using mocks. Okay. So here you can see what we have done is we have defined the class and we have extended this unit extension. Okay. This you need to test with database integration. Okay. So do you all want to see the implementation first or the test case first? Implementation? Okay. Okay, so here I have created an interface called blog. Okay, it has 3 lines, one for create, edit. Okay, so we have 3 tables. So you can have 3 models, right? One is a comment model, post, and author model. Okay, so basically, what is the common functionality you see in all of these 3 models? You should have a create, edit, and get. So when I define it in an interface called blog, I just need to implement it in my models. What this helps you in is, let's say you miss the create function. You just implement this edit and get. So when you run that model, it will say that you are missing the create function. It's like a rule that you need to execute, you need to have these 3 in all the 3 models. Okay? Okay. So this is the post model, you can say. What we are doing in the, we have a private DB connection. So when you initialize post, you need to pass a database connection. Okay. This is the construct part. Then we have a create function here. Basically what it does is, it inserts into the posts, okay, and it executes it and returns the inserted ID. Okay. Then there is edit. Okay. Basically, it just edits it and returns the result, whether it is true or false. Okay. This one is get function, okay, whether you want to get a post or a set of posts, okay. If you just one post, you need to send the ID. If you need all the posts, you need not pass anything in the argument, okay. So basically what it does is, if you have an ID, it inserts this like where ID it uses, otherwise it doesn't use this, okay. Okay, and here I have a get post content, okay. This will be using like, let's say you want something like you want to display a post, okay, in the blog. So what information you need? You need the post info and the author info and the comments to display, right? So that is what it does, okay. Okay, so I have another function here, okay. The one I said, like I'll be updating the emails sent, right? So here you will get the email content, okay, the name of the person whom you want to send, okay, and the post. And here I have the send email function, okay. So what it will do is it will send the email, okay, and after sending, it will update the posts with email sent. It will just increase the count by 1. Okay. Anyone has any question here in this? Okay. So how do you test this create with a database? What you would like to do? Let's say I want to test this create. This is, let's say this is the initialization. How do you test it?
We can pass the post parameter as blank array or or any normal.
Okay. So what should your post contain? Title, content, author, and all these fields, right? So you need to pass that. So in order to pass that, you should initialize a field and you just pass it, right? Okay. After passing it, what do you expect? I'm telling about a database testing, okay? Let's say I have 4 records, I want to insert another. So what do you return? Yeah? It should return? Yeah, 5, right? Because you know that your initial state is 4. So it will return 5, right? Okay? And another thing, what else you want to test? 5 is one thing.
And exactly what that value is inserted or not. Like the post value is inserted or not.
Okay. So you need to check like what is the new table structure, right? What are the table structure you expecting? You can do it in 2 ways, okay? One is, let's say I have a complete structure. I know that 4 records were there. I'm storing it in an array. After that, I know what I inserted, right? So I'll just add another element to the 5th one. And I'll fetch all the records from the database. And I'll just match them. Then it tests, right? Okay? Another thing, you got the insert ID 5, right? So you can fetch that record and match against what you tried to insert. Right? Any question? Anyone any question? Okay, so I'll just show you the tests. Okay. So at the initial stage I said that we needed to implement 2 functions, right? One is get connection and another is get dataset. So before each of your test cases executed, it executes this get dataset. Okay. So what it is doing is, it is creating an XML dataset from your seed.xml. Okay, because I have defined the initial structure there. So it truncates the table and it inserts all this data into your database. Okay, and here get connection is it gets a connection to the local database which you want to test against. Okay, so what I have done is I have created a PDU connection. Okay, with the required password and driver connection. Okay. So this is the first. One was the create function. You know everything, right? Like what create did. So here I have a test create. Okay. So what it does is, this is the assembling stage. You do a new post and you pass the database connection. Okay. Then what you do? Then you try to create it with the parameter, right? So I create like something like PHP is great and author ID, created date and updated it. Okay. After this, I know that I got my ID, right? Okay. So after this, I know that when it ran the seed.xml file, okay, in that let's say 4 records were there. Okay. Now if I insert another, there will be 5 records, and this will be at the last, right? Okay. So what I have done is okay. So this is another XML dataset I created. Okay. In the c.xml, this exact file was there, but till the third row, that is still here. Okay. So this matches the c.xml structure, but I have inserted this data. Okay. So what I did, I just created a similar structure here. So what I now test is, I test what I fetched from the database against this whole data. Okay. So that will match my test case. Okay. So here you can see that this is the resulting table. Okay, I inserted it and I got all my posts. Okay, and then what is the expected table? I have an expected data structure, so I just create a data from it. Okay, expected create posts. Okay, so it creates a tabular structure. Okay, because that is what create XML dataset does. Okay, now what I do is assert tables equal. Okay, this is my expected table and this is my resulting table. Okay, so I compare both the structures. Okay, any question? Okay, so what did you get from it? This is one of the like fundamentals of testing a database. What do we get from it? Sandeep? Yeah, what we got from it? Like,
In the first line, you have created object of post class.
yeah.
That post class is part of the unit testing module or unit code.
It is, you can say it's an integration testing because we are using the database connection. Okay, which one? This create?
Consider that post class.
Yes,
It's inside your unit testing or unit code.
it's in the code.
You have to include that.
That is taken care of like by unit. You can define some initial structure so that whenever you call this new post, it will search and it will include that file.
Here, one more thing, you have run the test case for 3 records.
Yes.
So 3 lakh records only. So it's like selecting those 3 lakh record and checking for the last record.
That is,
3 lakh one record and you have the file, that XML file, and you're matching it.
Yes.
So that will be a like a big burden for
Yes,
getting
so
this
you should like be testing your basic functionality, and for basic functionality you don't need that many records. Like when you talk of that many records, you're going for optimization and all those stuff, right? Whether you are able to fetch that many records, but here you are basically concerned whether it updated a record.
But this test train once, and it will be run whenever the new record will be entered into the database or table. Okay.
But you want to test this against your production database, right?
Yes.
You want to run this against production, correct?
Yeah.
Still, it will not run also. It will run on local or anywhere.
Yes.
They will stay. The same thing will happen. Like if suppose we have 1,000 of records, not data,
But
100 records or something.
like it's a different thing. Let's say for unit testing, you need to have a different database. Let's say you're developing locally and you want a similar database similar to live. Okay, so you have many records. That is for your browser level testing, your functional testing. Okay, but when you're going for unit testing, you should have a separate database because that will involve a lot of truncation and inserts, which you cannot expect in your that database because that will be take much time. Okay. Yeah. So what I will say is that this is the basic thing. Like if you want to test against the database, what you need is an initial data. So I knew what was the initial data and what I inserted. So what should be the next data state, and I compare it against the database. So that is the basic thing when you go with integration testing with database. Okay. Yeah.
Basically, when we write unit test cases, most of the time we are writing test cases, so we write most of the positive cases, like it will get passed. But
Yes.
in this case, like I want to fail this case because I want a failure case also. So expected table I need to create less data or something.
Let's say you want to test, like let's say you don't pass something. Okay, this title you don't pass.
Yes.
Let's say only these four, but you know it needs a title, right? So what it should do is either should throw you an exception or it should include you, right? Most probable cases it should throw you an exception. So PHP unit has some functions to catch for exceptions also. Okay, you just pass an @ exception and the type of exception you are expecting from this function. Since you are trying to test a different case for that function, right? You have to write another test case. This is the positive test case you did. You have to write another to catch that exception for that data which you want to pass. What? Any question? Okay. Any other question?
And that new post the parameter should be like dollar just get connection. I think it's by mistake.
No, it's like
A dollar just get connection.
you need to get another connection from this. It's like PHP unit needs a connection of its own. Okay, like $this connection, but our implementation in the code it requires a DB object. Okay, so you either pass this $DB, okay, or you do like $this connection and you get a connection out of it. Okay.
So you are going to just delete functionality.
Delete I have not implemented here.
Means I think like how you will implement it. Say you have 10 means for set of records.
Yeah.
You will first insert into the DB, then you will delete one, then you will match whether there are three or not. Like that.
You can test this in two types. Let's say I have 5 records initially in the database. Okay. I know that record 3 exists. So I'll pass delete ID 3, right? Delete function. So what it will do, it will remove the third one. Now net result should be what? 1, 2, 4, 5. Right? So you create a data structure for 1, 2, 4, 5 and compare against the data from the database. Select star from posts. You will contain 1, 2, 4, 5 and in your expected data set 1, 2, 4, 5 is there. No? And if you want to test another case also, you can do a query against like select star from posts where ID is 3 because you deleted that. It should not be there. But it doesn't make sense because you already fetched the whole posts record. Right? So that itself does everything. The sequence in which all the data is present. Right?
Before running every test case, I have to truncate this database.
You don't need to. PHPUnit will do it automatically.
Yeah. That it will work.
Yes.
It will truncate all data, insert again,
Yes.
then it will delete. You have to fetch again, then match.
Yes.
Even you have to insert in XML. Means add in XML, then.
Yes.
match.
Yes. That you have to create the database. That is the kind of extra thing it's involved. Like you have to maintain the data.
Like already said, you inserted first. Then I will delete. I will execute the delete test case. Then I will match. Then I don't need again to insert. Will it be possible?
Didn't get you again.
Say first you inserted.
Yeah.
5 records. Then you know like already there are 5 records.
5
Now-
records are there. You inserted 5 records again.
Now you inserted.
Okay.
So you know 5 records inserted.
Okay.
4 were there. Now you inserted 1. There are 5 records. Now you want to delete 1.
Hmm.
So you deleted 1. So now there will be 4.
Yes.
So you can match the 4.
Yes.
Means for delete you do not need to again reinsert and all those things.
He's trying to say like when you do insert first time, then your DB PHPUnit truncate the DB and your like seed XML will get inserted. Right?
Yes.
When you delete it, then this again not happen.
This will again happen. Like every test case you do, it
Then
will again bring it
get
to the.
5, right?
Huh?
Then it will again get 5.
Again it will be 5. You are saying, let's say 5 were there initial state, and you are inserting 5 times.
So initially 4 you inserted 1.
Okay,
5.
then it became 5.
Then I have deleted 1.
Okay, inside that function where you are inserting and deleting.
Yes.
Okay.
After just insert I have deleted.
Okay.
Now again PHPUnit will again do a truncate of the DB operations.
Like the thing is, you did the insert and delete inside a function in your class, right? Module class. And you are testing that function, right?
Yes.
So when you test that function, it will only do that only the first time it enters into that function.
Yes. On a function when it enters, it will truncate the DB operation. It will do 1.
Once. Okay, it will truncate it. Then you insert. Let's say it truncated everything. 4 initial inserts from the seed XML file. Then you are saying inside that function, it did an insert and delete. Right? So now it's how much? 4 records, 5 insert, then another delete. Now 4.
Now we will set my insertion test case. Okay. Again I am going to test a delete test
Okay.
case. In a different test.
Yes.
I know like I am going to delete, so I don't need to insert again. I know like already there are 5 records in my table, so I will just delete 1. Then I will match the 4. For delete, I don't want to insert again from the seed.xml.
But if you want to do it using this database integration, it will always truncate. Okay.
I'm asking like without using this, can I do that?
That you can do it like, but you don't need a database connection for that. You are saying you want to test it along with insert, delete, right? Both in a combination.
Yeah.
So that you cannot do with this. Okay. With database integration, you can do that using mocks. There it doesn't initialize or truncate the database. Okay, we'll check that. So this is a get function. Similar it is. Okay. With test you don't need a XML. Okay. I know that when it truncates and initializes my database, this record is already present. Okay. So I just pass it a value of 2. Okay. and I know this should be there in my database. So this is basically how I'm testing, like what test get should do. Here basically you're just validating whether the value is there in your database and the structure matches what it is returning and what you're expecting. One of the advantages you get here is, let's say you have a new function, okay? You are saying that, okay, I just insert a new field, okay, is active in my posts. Whether it will work if I run my unit test cases. I just create a record in my database, nowhere else I'll do any change. Yeah. So you have already established like against what data you are going to test. So if you want it to pass, you have to again set your structure correctly, and also those changes will also be there in your classes also, right? The kind of structure you are returning. Okay. Okay. Here you can see we have it @depends test get. Okay. So what it says is, before running a test case for this, it needs to run this test get. Okay. Whatever it gets, it will pass into you. Okay. So if test get fails, this will automatically fail. Okay. So what I'm saying is, like, do not execute this if this fails. I'm saying that this is dependent on this. Okay. And this way you localize the error. You know that here error is there, so you do not proceed here. Okay. So basically what here I'm doing is I'm calling this get email content, okay, and I'm asserting it against this value.
Only delete that commits only PHPUnit and test.
Yes.
Like whether I need to check test it fast.
Yes. So let's say this function it depends on 2 unit tests. So what you can do is @test get, another add @depends test email, okay. So it will run that, whatever output it gets from both of these two, it will return here, post info and email info. Then it will execute this. Okay. Okay, and this is the send email function. Okay. So what we are doing here is we created the post class and we are trying to send an email, and you can see here it depends on the test get email content. Okay. And test get email content runs on get post. So when the PHPUnit runs this one, it runs another test case before it. Okay. When it will run this, it will try to run this again. When it runs this, it will try to run that. So it has a 3 dependent layers. Okay.
Code is like that, or commented.
Which one?
After it is
No, its code is like that. These are annotations you can see. Okay. You can mention like exception. So
something like that to tablet.
I'm not saying it's there. Okay. So it depends on the test get email content, and it will get the content here. Then here basically we want to check what this test send email does. What this does is, okay, what send email does is it sends an email, okay, and it increases the email sent count by 1. Okay. So how am I going to test this data? Under what should be there in the final expected XML? How is the final expected different from the initial known state? What this does that changes.
Email sent will increase.
Only one column.
Yes, only one column will change. So if you have an initial state, the another data set should be the one which you edited, the post. Just you need to increase the emails count by one. Okay. So that is what we are checking here. Okay. We tried sending an email. Okay. And basically we are checking after that the email sent count in the database is matching.
For each test cases, you should have an expected XML.
Yes.
Then we can validate.
You do not need it always. It's when you are updating or inserting you need. But when you are selecting something, you don't need it, right? A particular value, if you are selecting, you don't need it. You just need to have one data structure. One array value will suffice. And this is only one form I said, okay? XML. You can also have a array data structure. This is just a data you are representing your own, like initial state.
Real time is not possible. Real time testing is not possible.
Real time testing means?
Like we are inserting, at that time it's inserted or not. It's because testing is a constant set of data.
Yes.
Real time is not possible.
Real time you are saying like someone posted something, it came through controller and it didn't. Yeah, that is a kind of integration testing you can say. Okay. Like let's say we have some like applications which do that testing. Like you can use Selenium. Okay, you go and click it, you send a post, then you can integrate it with PHPUnit to check whether it increased on clicking on that. But this is what we are focusing on unit test, whether what you are saying your function is doing, whether it is doing that or not. Okay. Okay, so I'll run this test. Okay. Before this, what I want to show you is I'll truncate all the tables. Okay. So what are the test cases we are going to test?
Create,
Insert, update, get posts, and send email, and get email content. So when we do a send email, I should also receive an email, right? Okay. So here you can see, should it take time to run this test? All these test cases? Why? Okay, it will take time. Why? Two reasons. What are the things involved in your testing?
Truncate and
Depends.
Okay, one thing truncate, database connection. Okay, that will take time. Yes. So we have two dependencies here. One is database, okay, truncate, insert, that will take time, right? And you're sending an email, right? So that will take time. Okay. Let me include it. Okay, I just needed to include those files. The auto inclusion was not working for some reason. Okay. Okay, I'm running the integration test. So it did those database connections quickly. This I think it's sending the email. Okay. So it took around 8.62 seconds. Okay. And there are 6 test cases and 6 assertions inside it. Okay. So now if I check the database, okay, I had truncated the tables. So here you can see it contains a list of authors. It tried to include one, okay, the one. Basically we are testing the posts, okay. So here you can see that it should have, I think, 4 records, right? We try to insert one record, right? It's having 3, right? We did an insert test case, right? It should have 4 records, right? It's having 3. Why?
Maybe in the last cases it's truncated that table and test that function.
Yeah, so every test case it truncates, right? Yeah. So for the final case, they truncated it, and the final test case was whether email was sent. So it updated the email sent to 1. Okay? And okay, so you have another email here, right? So this format of this email also we are testing, right? Like get email content. So we have validated the email content also, and whether email function worked, and okay, I'll just make it very quick here. So that was what database integration test was. Now let's say I don't want to depend on this database connection. Okay. So what do I do? Like I don't want to check like whether it updated the database correctly, but I just want to know whether I'm getting the correct result, okay, and the correct logic, okay. So what PHP provides us is a mocking thing, okay. You can create mocks. Let's say you have an email sending function. So in our class what we did a send email, right? To that send email we are passing a mailer object, which does the function of sending the email, right? So what I want is I do not want to test the email function, whether the email is sent or not. I want to know when that email runs, it updates and gives me a value of 1 or not. Okay? So with mocks what you can do is, basically what mocking in this context means is like you are simulating a behavior. Okay? So let's say an email object. I am using email add address send function. So what I'll do, I'll just create a mock saying that create a mock for this object. It has 2 functions, send will take 1 parameter, okay, an email address. So here you can see we create mocks for 3 things here, okay. One is a PDO object and a PDO statement and a PHP mailer, okay. So what we are doing is we are creating a mock around the PDO statement. So with PDO statement you basically execute 2 functions, that is execute and fetch, okay. And with PDO object you create the prepare. First you prepare the string, then you execute it, okay. When you like basically the thing is, when you create a PDO object, then you create a prepare statement, okay, like the query you want to execute. So then you create a prepare, then it gives you a PDO statement. On that PDO statement you run the execute command, okay, then it does that query. So we just want to mock those 2 objects. Okay. So here what I'm saying is, if PDO statement is called, okay, there will be only two functions to it: execute and fetch. Okay, you can call these two functions on this. Okay. Then I'm saying that on the statement, this can be called any times. Okay, any number of times you can call this, and you have a method called execute on it. When you call execute, it will return true. That is just a behavior defining. Let's say in the real life case, you could get a value of true or false, right? Based on the database interaction. But here what I'm saying is it's true. I assume that the database went correctly. Okay. I just want to test my inner logic. Okay. Let's say the database happened correctly. After that, the correct sequence of steps takes place in my application. That I want to ensure. Okay. So with PDO mock, you have two functions. Okay, I am defining here: prepare and last insert. And I am saying that the prepare function can be run anytime. Okay, and what prepare will return you is a statement. So basically, what we are doing here is we are replicating a behavior similar to the database. Okay, in database, if you first initialize a PDO mock, okay, then you can call two functions on it: prepare. If you call prepare, what do you expect? A statement object. So that I'm saying here, that I'll be giving you a statement object. Okay. On statement object, what you can run? You can run execute a fetch. Okay, that I mentioned here. So I've created two mocks here. Okay. Any question on creating mocks? Any question?
I think it will be better understood by example, like when you are any test cases, so when you will run through this. You can
Okay. Similarly for PHP mailer, okay, PHP mailer has many functions. Okay, what I have done here is I have just defined 4 methods. Okay, if you try to call another function which is not defined here, it will give you an error. Okay, so I am just saying that it needs to have 4 functions: set from, is SMTP, add address, send. Okay, because these are the 4 functions which I have used in my logic.
We have included PHP mailer on top.
No. Okay. You don't need to, because you are creating a PHP mailer object. Okay. You don't need to have that exact PHP mailer. You just need to know that what you need to run your code successfully. You just need, let's say, what I'm defining here is I'm just saying that I need a set from, because I'm setting a from address in my code. Okay. And I need an add address and a send. These are the 3 functions which I need, okay, to run. So what this PHP mailer mock is, I just pass it as a dependency. Previously what you did, you passed the actual PHP mailer object. That had also these functions, right? But here I have created a similar thing, okay. So it will call all these functions, like let's say I'll pass a PHP mailer and I'll do a send. So it will execute the actual send function, right? But when it will call a send here, I have defined the behavior here. It will not do anything else. It will just return a true. It's like an empty structure. Okay? Any question? Okay. So this is the first test create. We had an integration test which used the database connection. Here what we are saying, PDO mock we already have, right? So here there is something interesting here. Leave this for a while, okay? Okay, so this one, okay, you have a new post. I am sending a PDO object Okay. So this is the value I want to insert. When I do a assert equals, okay, what like you know that inside that you are going to do a database insertion, right? Right? You need to forget everything about that XML structure, everything, okay? This is completely new. It's not related to that XML structure anymore. Okay? You know that when you do this create function, what are you trying to do inside? You are going to do a database insert operation on which object? On the PDO object, right? So that is what I am doing here. It is saying that if there is a call to last insert ID on the PDO mock object, you just need to return 1. That is the expected behavior, right? I want from the database connection. In the real case, it will insert and it will give me a value. But I know that the database connection works fine, I am saying. So I just say that if there is a database request inside this, okay, and I call to last insert ID, you just return me the expected ID, that is 1. Okay. So here I say $this assert equals expected ID $ID. Because $ID is a behavior I'm expecting, whether it is giving me the correct value or not. Okay. Let's say the database value did something. Okay. In which case this would be helpful, I would say. Let's say you have a database. Okay. You now edited the code and you got the ID, but you are now formatting it, let's say in array format, ID, then column 1. So then this case would not work, right? Then I would have to make it like ID, then value. So that is what you are trying to test. You're not trying to test the database. You're trying to test whether the logic worked or not. And you're getting the correct relevant value. This one everyone got, right? Why we have written this before this? No? Okay. This we are saying because here we know that inside this we are going to insert a value, right? And what are you expecting it should give you? It will give you an integer, right? PDO object, right? So that is what? If you call a last insert, it should give you a value. Okay? So now
This value means it is giving you the last insert.
yes, because we are just expecting a value. Why we wrote this is, when you go inside that, we are doing two things. We are doing an prepare for the insert query. I'll show you that.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but for example, you have run it once and then expected you have written 1, then next time when you run it will return 2.
Next time it will run.
Return 2.
Why means
So that's why I'm asking, it is returning the last inserted item.
it's just a value. I'll show you why we have written that.
Because in that function, I think post model you are returning the last inserted item.
Okay, here. Prepare, right?
Yes.
Then we are doing a last insert ID.
Yes.
For this, we have already defined the behavior. In the top, you remember? We wrote that if you do a prepare, return true. No, return a statement object. And when on the statement object you call a execute on anything, it returns true. So this too works fine, right? Because you passed the DB mock object here, and it ran this on that, and it just returned a true. It didn't do anything, no database operation. Okay, it just did this, satisfied this. Okay, and this one you are calling, right? So this one we didn't define it because it depends on your use case. You can write it like always return a value of 1 at the top also. But to make it different, we are calling it again at the bottom. Like if this function is called while running this, return a value of 1. Any question? There might be some confusion here.
So you are not expecting value, you are just checking whether it's returning last insert ID or not. Instead of not checking for the last insert ID 1 or 2 or 3.
No, that is
You
not.
don't expect. You are just expecting, like you are just expecting, it should return a last
Integer value. Okay. Like in this case, it's not much relevant to test unit test because it's a complete database thing. Let's say after this you are doing some operation on it. Okay. On that one value. Okay. Just modifying the data structure. Then that becomes important. You are checking the data structure against your expected value. Any question? No? So for this function, do we need anything extra if we want to test this? Like your last insert ID? Not required. Okay. If you want to test this, what should I test it against? What should be the expected value? You just need
Whether
to.
it is executed or not.
Yeah.
That's
Return true because we have defined it true there, right? Okay. So it's not much relevant in this case because it's a very straightforward thing, right? Okay, this function, how many test cases should I write for this? Right? Because you have if else, right? You have one value for another, right? Why it makes sense is because you see here fetch is here, and here we are changing the structure. Here it simply returns a array list, like a simple single array. Here it's a list of arrays, and you can see the data is changed, right? Format is changed. So do we need anything extra like that last insert ID here? No? Fetch needed. Okay. Okay, let's see. Okay, this was the test edit. Okay, we didn't do anything else. We just tested true with the value. Okay, that's okay. So here you see something, right? We called fetch again, right? Why was that needed?
Because this is a database function.
Yes.
We are not depending on database.
Yes.
We are only depending on we need to test the response that
Yes.
user defined response that you want to get from that function.
Yes.
So we need to avoid that one. We need to assume that this is true.
Yes. So you see, you want to test the get function, right? You know that it will fetch one, okay? So it has what I'm saying is when it runs at the sequence one, okay? So when you do a test get, okay, the sequence one means the function which ran at the index one, okay? So here what it does is if fetch is called, okay, I wanted to return this expected post, okay? Because you basically need to satisfy inside what database connections are happening, you need to satisfy them here, okay? So what will happen is you are doing a new post here, you passed a value 2, okay? You are assuming that database connection works fine, okay? You are getting the expected result. What should be the expected result? This, right? So what I'm saying is, if an fetch method is called, you just return this, okay? So assert equals, I should get the retrieve post. Make sense? Okay. Okay, so here is what is a little interesting. You have dollar expected posts. Okay, so this we are doing to get for the get with an without any parameter. Okay, so here I am saying these are the expected posts. Okay, these expected posts are the posts which should be returned by the database connection. Okay, not by the function which we are testing. This should be returned by the database. Okay, that is what I'm saying. So here you can see I'm saying that what it does is okay, let me show you the code once for it. Okay, so here you can see we did an execute. Okay, we are looping. Okay, we are doing a fetch request. Okay, let's say you fetched in an actual database connection. You fetch 3 records. 3 records are there. So you fetch how many times? 3 times. Okay, and finally you will return a count and the posts, right? In an actual database connection. So here I am saying the database will return these 3. Okay, and here I am saying that if the method fetch is called, you return the first value. Okay, this makes sense? Why I am calling this? I am looping through each expected post. Okay, and I am saying that if a fetch method is called, pass this first one. If again it is called, pass the second one. Because that is what it is going to give you, that behavior, database object behavior, right? You are just calling through the fetch object thrice. So I am saying if a fetch object is called, pass the first value. Again it is called, pass second value. Okay? So the main thing which we are testing here is this one. Okay? The expected posts and the count. This should be the final result. And I am calling this thing now. So this should match. The main difference is I have mocked the database behavior inside. What is happening? Finally, I want to test is what is the output of these two. Okay, that should match. I am not checking whether database happened or not. Whether the resulting if database happened correctly, I am getting the correct behavior or not.
If you want to fail, how will you fail it?
Want to fail it.
I think in one of the, you can remove one of the element from any object.
Yes.
So you will be expecting to and the result is coming out.
This is for here we don't need any database connection. Okay? It's a direct function like you pass a parameter and you get a structure, data structure value, and you compare it against. Okay. Okay. So here we need something. Okay. Here we will be testing the send email function. Okay. So what we are doing here is we are passing the PHP mailer mock. Okay. So inside PHP mailer mock, what it does is, so here you can see it will receive the mailer mock here. Okay. It will call is SMTP or no. So basically I want to validate is this mail function works. Okay. So I have set it to true, right? It returns just true. Then I have defined another function here, add address. Okay. That also returns true. And another is send. So what I have done for send is return true. So whenever this is called, it will return true. So I am assuming that the email function works fine. Okay. So after that, it will just prepare and update it. Okay. and it will just send me a return is set. Okay, it should be true. So if I run the test case, I missed it again. So it is quite great. So this is basically like you're testing a business logic. You're mocking objects which are external to your application, and you're basically testing your inner logic. Okay. Okay, so we are at the end now. So which one is better? Which one? Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, it's good because we're checking the connection there.
Okay. Huh?
Same.
Simple.
Okay.
Straightforward.
The second one is taking less time than the first one.
Yeah. Like here, you were not able to see the real importance because we didn't have anything inside. Let's say you have too many manipulation, looping, okay, checking of whether it's a prime number or not, and then changing the data, then it matters. Okay. Then you'll be getting some data and you have to check it. In that case, you're not depending on the database. You just want to check the core functioning. Okay. So what is necessary? You just want to do it like which is more important?
Both will require depending on the year business.
It depends on the complexity of that function.
Okay. So you write only DB integration or this one?
I think PHP guys have developed that Jacko. Like they are using the driver. They must have even tested their execute function.
Yeah. Okay. So we will not use DB. We will not test any database. Okay. Anyone else? Yep.
That depends. We, if it is like the logic, we need to do the test case or the functionality on which the test case should run is simple and all. Then we can do go for the DBUnit. Otherwise, mocks not working.
Okay. Anyone else? Yeah. Anyone else? Okay.
What's the advantage? This is for developer or client?
It's for, you can say it's for the developer. Okay. So
Then again, means you are writing pass the functions.
yeah, that is, I showed you because we are seeing it like I didn't want to like, let's say very, like to start with, I just wanted you to go with the code first and then how to test it. But usually how it works is, you first write the test case, okay? So let's say we don't have this function. So when you write something like new post, then you write like $post. Then you initialize it with a create function, right? Then when you create a function, let's say you're not going into the development part directly. When you go there, you will just write something, right? So I want to know like if you have a create, what did you pass into it? What is the minimum you require? First you may think that okay, I'll initialize the database inside that. But we can initialize it when we are initializing the class by passing it inside.
The same thing we are doing at the time of writing. We are thinking what we need. Also, we have so many functions like logging functions.
Yes, like the thing is when you go with the development directly, you see that okay, there is a very fast process, okay, I'm developing it and it's very quick. But when you go through it, it's a different thing. Like here you develop it, but here you are going like with a requirement set. When you write a test case, you're defining a requirement. Okay. But when you develop, you may develop something more than the requirement also, which is not needed. Okay, an extra case. But here you are writing the test case and then you're trying to satisfy that through development. You're just trying to achieve that minimal test case. Okay. So in a way your test case supports your documentation. Okay. So let's say a new feature came. You first write a test case for it and then you develop it. Okay. So in that way you have a documentation kind. You don't have you have some functionality but you don't have a test case for it. And your every development code, everything is test covered. That is your most important thing. Okay.
And one thing also is while developing a new function, suppose you don't know, you want to change some other function that will be dependent on one thing, and that will change it, and the whole function will be ready.
Yes.
For that also, even in testing and even in new development code, it doesn't know about the logic code.
Yes.
So when you change some function, generally action of the function, that time
Yes.
also whole function will be ready.
Yes.
For that also.
So that is also one thing. Let's say initially I said, like if I added I have a new functionality, okay. I'll add another column in the table, okay. So I know that my new functionality is working. Let's say your project is very vast. This is just one file I'm showing. Let's say it consists of 100, like 20, 50, 100 files. You don't want to test like everything whichever, right?
Inside every time you run it.
Right. No, you need to run it.
You need to run means you will be actually like following inside other time.
Yes. But how much you will do that? That's a very manual and hectic task, right? You may run it thrice, 4 times. But like machines are more efficient at doing that. Like you just run the test case, it will pass it. Okay. So that's the kind of confidence you are also getting. It like the change you made is not breaking anything existing. Okay. Maybe in an integration test it is failing, but the unit logic is working. Okay. So the thing is we need to cover both the things. Okay. You need to unit test your models because you need to check whether your core logic feature is there. Okay. Whichever the client wants. Okay. And whether since it's a model part and you need to check because part of the logic, right? So you also need to check whether it updated the database correctly or not. So both are needed. And unit test is a must to ensure that all unit modules are working as expected. And there is a thing like, let's say you have a feature implemented, you know that it's not risking much. In that case, you don't want to run all the database connect. You don't have that much time, right? The client is saying like, I want it. You know that it's a minimal risk, so at least you need to run the unit test. They will be faster. They don't have external dependencies because you know that okay, that API connection is working fine. The database connection is working fine. So in that case, at least you should run the unit tests. Because let's say you have many functions. So running database every time, that will take time. 3 to 4 hours at least, depends on the application. Okay. But unit testing is very much like integral. It is required first. Then you can go for this database integration to check the database values. So that's it. Any questions?
But it's a good way to integrate PHPUnit, like we are installing PHPUnit globally, local machine. Currently, in professional part, they are using inside Composer as a business.
Yes.
It's being installed as a vendor.
Yes.
Installing, if some we are using any third-party tools for code review, something like that. They are also running the code for these things. So they are running that PHPUnit from your own project code. So which would be good? Whether it should be installed locally.
Composer is a better thing. You'll have it like a dependency. Okay. Because it should be documented. And Composer, when you install it through Composer, it gets it into your Composer JSON file. So whoever installs it, they just need to install like Composer, install it will come. And also many frameworks, they go through Composer way. Okay. Like like Laravel, etc. They go through this composer. So it's better to this for testing and showing the address to it. Okay. Any other question?
Like if we are implement both unit testing and DBUnit integration testing, is there a way like if I want to run only unit test, I can execute that DBUnit testing? It is not possible, right?
What you can do is inside test folder. Like I have not gone into a detail like bootstrapping of PHP, but they have a structure. Like you can have tests, you can have integration test folder, you can have a unit test folder. So you can execute whichever folder you want to. Any other question? Anything? Any question? Any questions?
While running PHPUnit test from production, will there be any test database or you don't need to test the database?
You don't actually you don't need to have a PHP unit in your production. That's never recommended. Like what you can do is like you have a local environment, you test it against PHP unit. Then what people do is like they have a continuous integration. Okay, so once you commit it, it goes to a staging server. There, what they do is the code gets committed. It goes through all the tests like PHP unit and because this you tested in local, but that is against that is a test which you are doing. What was the code which was compiled? Because in your local you have only your data. In staging, so many people are committing, right? So that needs to again work against that. So that is again a different environment. And when that goes committed in the server, you final server you don't do because that's not recommended. Yeah, anything else? Anything? Testing related anything? Any questions from that?
Using PHPUnit can you play from
You can integrate Selenium driver with PHP unit. Okay, so that will work. And it has like PHP coverage also. Okay, so when you run like PHP unit coverage, okay, so it generates a report and it needs X debug. So that report you can see in your browser also, like how much percentage of the code is covered under test. But PHP unit is basically, as the name implies, it's for your unit code. And unit code you should be able to test through your console. Okay. When you want to test something in your browser, you need a integration testing which you're talking about, like Selenium testing. You click on it, then it should send a request. Okay. So when it sends a request, it depends on the unit modules. So that is what PHP unit tests. And Selenium tests like what this is the data you send, what you expect from a user perspective.
How many assumptions should be inside a test case method?
How many?
Assertions.
You can put any number of assertions. Like
so there are five classes functions inside a test case method. First one fails, then will the rest follow to be executed?
yes, the rest will execute. It will just say that this failed. Is it no? It will not work? Okay.
Right. Should it be advisable like we should keep only one assertion inside a function? Otherwise, I have to run again the test in PHP unit. Now, if the first one fails and rest four will not be executed, then again I have to take the first one, then I have to run the test unit again.
Yeah, it basically depends. Like if your assertions are completely different, let's say what you can check is let's say you are expecting an array, okay. You know that array should match some value. You don't have the exact value say to compare against it. You just want that it should have there are different levels of testing. You can exactly test what is the data, or you just want that this field should be there in the data. Okay. Okay. Let's say you want to fetch a email content. It's a very big email. Let's say you don't want to compare the entire email content. You just want to find some key business related components inside that. Okay. So you first search that whether these 5 elements are there inside that element. So that will be 5 assertions, right? So if one fails, it's correct. The other should not, because to just assert 5 business like keys or strings, you don't need 5 test cases, right?
But one method sometimes we check, if I will give this input,
Yeah,
it will fail. If I will give this input, it will pass.
If you have like
If I will give this input, then it will run exception.
yes, then you should have a test case, different test case. Yeah.
Different methods.
Yeah. But if you are trying to, for the same return value, you are asserting 3-4 times, then you should have it in one test case. Okay. If you are branching logic, that is, it follows different routes for different values, then you should have a test case for each logic and branching. Okay. And this at the rate depends you should have. Like if you feel it depends on something, so it's better like to give a at the rate depends annotation, because it will do twice thing. Let's say the get function, it unit tests that get function once. Let's say another function depends on the get, so it will again run that get. So gets run twice. Okay, so it validates that ran and that input got passed to this. Okay. Any other question? Okay. Thank you.